Well, we are about to have a wonderful closing keynote with Andrew Lindsay. He's going to come out in a second. I just wanted to thank all of you for coming today. I've had a wonderful time meeting so many of you. And yeah, with no further ado, come on out, Andrew. Well, one of the things I learned today is that this AI thing is not going away. It is not a fad. It is here to stay. And in all seriousness, it's clear. It's like obviously one of the biggest shifts that we've seen in decades. And I think some people are saying an even bigger shift than the internet. And I think the question on so many people's minds is like, how do we move faster? How do we not just see the productivity gains, but how do we actually see performance gains? We all know that the winners are going to be the organizations and the individuals that adapt faster. How do we adapt faster? So that's what we're going to be talking about. So Andrew, you are kind of at the forefront of AI and this transformation that we're seeing. So how about if you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Microsoft?
Sure. Thanks, Josh. First, I just want to say how great it is to be here and met many of you. I see some friends in the audience, some colleagues in the audience, and this is an exciting time to be thinking about technology, to be thinking about AI. The world has never undergone such rapid changes around such a fundamental kind of shifts in workflows and the ways that the world is going to operate, and I think we're all right at the center of that right now. But to answer your question, Josh, a little bit about me. First, I'll step back and go from the very beginning. I'm from Toronto originally, so hopefully there's no Dodgers fans in the audience.
First off, I apologize on behalf of all of America for beating you.
Oh, that was a little tough. It was a little painful. But I grew up in Toronto. I started my kind of journey. I studied biology, actually, in college, and then I went and studied law and business. I never expected to go into technology. I expected to do a whole series of other things. Started my professional career in investment banking just down the street in Wall Street, and then moved into consulting, and then I joined into the tech world, and I joined a startup doing consumer electronics. And then after that, I moved into enterprise software with HubSpot. And I know there's many colleagues from HubSpot here, focusing on partnerships and acquisitions and investments and platform, and how do you bring the best companies together and the best technologies together to have the most powerful solutions for customers. And then from there, 3.5 years ago, I decided to join Microsoft. And I split up my time in that 3.5 years. There was 6 months before ChatGPT, and then 3 years afterwards. And they've been radically different. Right? Like as a company, Microsoft has changed dramatically. As an industry, we have changed dramatically. I think all of your businesses have probably changed dramatically, and if they haven't, then they're probably going to very soon, or you're going to have some challenges. Right? But that's a little bit about me. At Microsoft, I cover a range of things focusing on partnerships, investments, and strategy.
So whenever I have an opportunity to speak with people who are just obviously very successful, one of the top questions that always comes to mind for me is like, what drives your passion for the work? Like, what motivates you to do what you do?
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. I mentioned I started out in biology, right? I started out thinking I was going to go into medicine, and I was going to have my impact on the world by helping people one at a time in medicine and as a physician. And then I shifted from that to thinking maybe I would do it in law and focusing on justice. And went to law school thinking about how do I ensure that people have access to the rights and to the liberties that everyone deserves. And then from there, I decided to move into a series of other things, but my why is grounded in like, what's the impact that I can have on the world to leave it in a better place than how I found it? And I think about that right now in the work that I do. And I think about that in technology. I think about that not just at the companies that I work with, but more broadly as a society. How can it be a force for good? That's my why.
Yeah, that's great. And you're a member of the board of directors at Asana. Thank you. What has kind of motivated you to stay involved with our company?
Yeah, I've been on the board for a little over 4 years, and it's an incredible business. And the reason I joined the board was the vision for the company deeply resonated with me. That in order to have more impact on the world, we need to understand how organizations can operate more efficiently. And how do we harness the power of technology for organizations to be able to manage their workflows and unlock the potential of every individual in a more significant way? And that's fundamentally what Asana is about. Right? Asana is about taking the talent in an organization and help it produce more and have greater output by reducing the amount of work about work. That's what attracted me to it, and that's what's kept me going. And what's been amazing is I didn't know that this AI revolution was going to come, but it's the company that's so incredibly well-positioned to take advantage of it. And we see that now with things like teammates and so on, but that ability to actually drive more output by taking together kind of SaaS and applications and automated workflows, plus the power of intelligence is super powerful.
Yeah. It's interesting how throughout your journey, one thing led to another,
Yeah.
and now you're here on our board at Microsoft doing the incredible things you're doing. So you see a lot of organizations in your role that are adopting AI.
Yeah.
You know which organizations are moving fast. So what are the types of traits that individuals or organizations share that are able to move fast? What makes them able to move fast?
Sure. Maybe it's helpful to share a little bit more about the role and the perspective that I have. So at Microsoft, my responsibility is bringing together companies that can add to the Microsoft platform and where Microsoft can help them be more successful across everything from our data centers, so literally land, power, water, up to our cloud business and storage and network and compute, our government business, our healthcare business, our quantum business, and then our models and our data platform. So partnerships that you read in the news about OpenAI or XAI or what we're doing with Anthropic, all of these things, that's all part of the work that I do. And so I do get an opportunity to see a wide range of different kinds of businesses. I see businesses that are moving at the fastest possible pace, small companies that are fewer than a dozen people who have just some of the most incredible talent in the world who are just moving at a breakneck speed because they see the power of this technology to change the world, and they have this vision, they have this insight, and they're able to corral the resources to do it. Right? You go from that to working with the government, which is kind of on the other end of the spectrum in many ways, whereas a large organization, the way they make decisions is very different. And within an organization like that, but there's still pockets of very impressive innovation. And what the common thread is of those is who has vision right now? Who is not stuck by what the reality is of today, but can see that the near future is going to be markedly different and is starting to move towards that. And sometimes that vision is, I see something that's going to be different 6 months from now and building towards that. Some it's years from now. But those are the companies that are able to move fastest, where there's a coherent vision and there's a level of alignment to the entire organization to drive against it.
Yeah. So clarity of vision, clarity of thought, those are kind of the two key things that you see.
And alignment and conviction about it. Mm-hmm. That's through the organization.
Yeah. Top to bottom?
Top to bottom.
Yeah.
Top to bottom.
And so are there any particular industries, generally speaking, that you are seeing that are moving faster than others?
Outside of the tech industry, of course, one thing that surprised me is the healthcare business.
That is incredibly surprising.
I'm guessing most of you wouldn't expect healthcare to be the industry that moves quickly, right? Highly regulated, highly, there's a lot of administration required, right? There's lots of players who have diverging interests. But in healthcare, and if any of you have gone to a doctor's office or a hospital lately that's on the cutting edge, you'll see that more and more they're transcribing the patient-physician interactions, right? They are using AI for imaging. And that's just profound because the quality of life improvements that can be achieved from that are pretty incredible. And it's an industry that's not waiting. It's an industry that's found a way for the key movers and the key innovators to actually get adoption. Right? Like at Microsoft, we have our Dragon Copilot product that is transcribing interactions. But we also, it's not just transcribing it. We have technologies that listen to the interaction with the patient and can tell if somebody has proclivity towards mental illness based on the patterns of speech that they have. And it's not dispositive on it. It's not telling that patient, like, oh, you're sick, right? It's saying, you should be thinking about this, physician. This machine has identified something that an individual in the room just doesn't have the capacity in terms of all they have to think about to solve for. But it's a great example of something that can be done in the innovation right now that just was not possible just a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of what we've talked about today in many of our sessions is about, human AI collaboration.
Yeah.
And doctors aren't afraid of robots coming to take their jobs.
No.
And they embrace it, and they're embracing that collaboration. So,
Great point.
yeah.
Yeah. And that might be like a fundamental reason why they're so comfortable accepting it. It's because there isn't this aversion like, oh, if I accept it, you're not going to need a orthopedic surgeon any longer.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'd never heard that fear before. And so maybe that's why the appetite is so great. It's a great point, Josh.
Yeah. So you mentioned you are kind of at the center of a lot of these big announcements. So for all of you that aren't aware, whenever you read a press release about Microsoft making a big investment here or doing a partnership here, Andrew, you are at the center of these things, whether you're doing the negotiation yourself and speaking with all the players. So just very plainly, like, is the scale of all of this investment that we're seeing in AI justified? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Sure. And the scale is staggering, right? I mean, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, the largest spenders in CapEx were oil companies, utilities, so on. Now it is Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, so on. It's all the tech companies.
Meta is building a data center the size of Manhattan Island.
Yeah.
I mean, that is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are remediating nuclear sites,
Yeah.
right? Because the power is so significant.
So is it justified?
And what you have to believe, and I fervently believe this, is that the AI right now is, in some ways, it's a luxury. And like we can choose to use it. We are choosing how to incorporate it in our lives. And all major transformational technologies at some point were luxuries. Running water, electricity, Wi-Fi. Many of us remember like when Wi-Fi was first being introduced and the ability to get access to it. Now it's literally ubiquitous.
I think my wife would prefer to Wi-Fi going back to being a
Going
luxury.
back?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
But that's what AI is going to be. And in order to have that kind of ubiquity through all aspects of our lives, it's going to take a major amount of investment.
So, given that you have purview into so many of these types of investments, do you have any perspective on where the quote-unquote smart money is going?
Yeah, I think the smart money is going to, like, if you look at where the major players, whether it's us at Microsoft or others, it's really about this conviction that the entire workforce and our lives are going to change, right? And you think like the smart money, and I look at what Asana is doing, and it is saying we have to invest heavily in being ahead of where customers are. There's a long adoption curve. The penetration actually isn't still not that massive yet. But we see the green shoots of early adopters, and we see and we can quantify the success that they're having. And while you have people saying, oh, it's still so early, oh, it's too expensive, oh, it's scary, right? Like there's always going to be people like that.
Yeah.
And what the smart money is saying is like, the wave is going in one direction. It's all coming. And like to sit and wait for certainty, to sit and wait for like absolute clarity and predictability of what it's going to look like, that's just not going to happen yet.
Yeah.
It's moving too fast. But it's like it's making these bets, and it's kind of the classic like you shoot for the stars, you may not land there, but you'll hit the moon kind of thing. Like it's that. You just got to be in the race. You got to go.
So we're moving fast. I think every leader in this room is making bets.
Yeah. But every leader in this room is making bets. But I guess when I look out in this group, I ask, how many of in your organizations you feel everybody inside of your organization has fundamentally rethought the majority of their workflows? And like raise of hands, you think most people in your organization have, right? Like, I appreciate that your organization is like on the edge of the spear here, but most haven't.
Yeah, most organizations are trying to bolt AI onto existing workflows, and
That's right.
That's not going to work.
That's not going to work. And if you think about like the internet, like imagine doing our work without email. Right? Like imagine doing our work without being able to, without any kind of SaaS application. Because it's unimaginable now.
Yep.
Right? And like that took years. Like that same kind of transformation is going to happen.
But we have to assume that there will be, and I'll throw out an old 1999 B2C reference, there's going to be a dancing sock puppet out there. Mm-hmm. There are going to be some, does anybody get that reference? No one? Okay. Was it pets.com?
Pets.com,
okay.
Yeah.
There are going to be some pets.coms out there. There are going to be
100%.
some organizations that make some wrong bets on AI adoption. So do you see any of that out there? Do you see any companies, without naming names, that are possibly making some wrong bets? And what differentiates the companies that are making the right bets from the wrong bets?
The thing I think to remember is that the pets.com example, or a lot of the companies that didn't work out in the dot-com boom, those were companies that were they were started out around a question around like changing. The internet was so fundamental to them, right? Their core business model didn't actually work. Right? They weren't making money from day one. They didn't necessarily have a path to making money. They didn't have the journey laid out in that way. And that's very different than a lot of companies today. Where a lot of companies today, it's not about trying to be the pets.com. It's about like, how do I think about my procurement in a way where I can use AI, or back then it would be like, how can I do my procurement in a way that I'm purchasing online, right? And do that more efficiently. And like that's like, we still need to be able to support that.
Yep.
And that's not going away. And then in terms of your question, like, are there companies who are going about this in the wrong way? Yeah, there's a ton of them. Like we all, like, you've probably seen them. There's companies that are doing things on AI, and you're like, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, I am not gonna, like, there's just a bunch of things, and you're like, AI doesn't need to do this. Like, I actually enjoy doing this myself. Like, it's just, I think there's examples of those.
Yeah.
But
Well, are there any technologies that you see that are out there relative to AI that are overhyped? They're getting a lot of attention right now, but you actually see it fizzling out in terms of a particular use case.
What is overhyped?
We can come back to that one.
It's a good question. I'm really thinking.
Basically, I think what Andrew is saying is that there is no overhyped AI technology out there.
The thing about like what's overhyped, right? Like, I think about like it's overhyped in this moment because it's ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm. And back to the pets.com example, well, Chewy.com did just fine.
Did okay, right? Some of these are ahead of their time. And I think about like the devices. Right? There's a lot of devices out there that are AI-first devices, not really getting a lot of adoption. You could argue in saying that they are a solution in search of a problem. You could say like, oh, there's overhype around those. But eventually, I do believe we're going to have devices that we're going to be wearing consistently that are AI native, that are going to change the way that we interact with the world. We're just not there yet because the consumer behavior that needs to adjust to start accepting those is going to take a long time. And so you could say like it's overhyped versus consumer readiness, but like the fundamental product isn't overhyped.
So you heard it here first. We are all going to have chips implanted in our heads. Okay, so on the topic of chips implanted in our heads, I think like trust and security and compliance. You see the jump I made there? Okay.
I got it.
Probably the least sexy part of AI, probably one of the most important parts of AI.
Yeah.
How should leaders think about that? How should they think about trust and security and compliance? Are there ways to get a competitive advantage in the ways of thinking about trust and security and compliance?
Yeah, I think it's essential, right? If you're a company and you're not thinking about the trust and security and compliance, like you're woefully exposed. There are going to be technologies that don't work, that cause dire damage to businesses, and you have to think carefully about which tools you're using. And the responsibility is really on everyone who is deciding which tools to bring into their organizations and saying, can I trust this tool? And there's a few ways to think about it. One is this an organization, is this a company that's building a tool that I can just fundamentally have a lot of trust in? And are they enterprise ready? Do they have the maturity? Do they have the sustenance? Do they have the appreciation for the kind of sensitivities of your business? Not all do, right? Some very early stage companies just don't have to think about enterprise readiness. It's just not fundamental to them. They're just thinking about how do I get the first few dollars in the door to show product market fit, not about how do I scale to a very large organization. And you don't want to be working with one of those companies only to find out that you are prioritizing trust and safety more than they are. That's a huge problem. If that's the balance, if you are thinking about this more than your vendor is, something's very wrong there. And so picking the companies and picking the tools that you bring in is of utmost importance. So that's one. Two is all of you have a role in that, but everybody in your company does too. Right? We all have some shadow IT in the businesses where we work, where people are bringing their own tools in.
We don't at Asana, by the way. None of that.
Asana never happens. No. Yes.
Socket, are you out there?
Yes.
We don't. He's our CIO.
But it's really important to recognize that that's a tendency that people have, which is I use this in my day-to-day life. I want to be able to bring it to work. And that behavior needs to be addressed. And it needs to be addressed in a very open-eyed, consistent way so that people understand what information, how can they use their phones? What information can they put into Copilot or ChatGPT and what can't they? How should they be thinking about their permissions? Right? And there's a level of training there that needs to happen for your companies to be prepared for it, in addition to the centralized function.
Yeah. I think the enablement piece is really critical because you have to be able to strike that balance between not making it a Wild West where you can just use whatever tools you want, but encouraging adoption.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is going to require some flexibility.
Yeah, because you also don't want to be the Department of No,
right,
where everyone says can I use this tool?
Once again, I want to go back to Socket. Did you hear that? We don't want to be the Department of No. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges that I've actually faced as a leader in trying to deploy AI technologies, and I think many others have as well, is just this fear of proof of concept goes on forever.
Yeah.
We're just not sure we're going to get the ROI. We don't want to increase the spend 4x and roll this out to 2,000 employees.
Yeah.
Because if we do and it doesn't work, guess who's going to be blamed?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're all being told we have clarity of vision, we have clarity of sight, we know that this is where the world is going, so we just have to do it. How do you strike that balance? What can you tell the leaders in this room about dealing with that fear of hitting the go button?
Yeah, it's real. It's real where there's this asymmetry that happens naturally in organizations that making bold decisions, there's often can be more penalty in getting it wrong than appreciation for getting it right. And that needs to be countered affirmatively and assertively by the leadership. And building a culture where it's okay to get some things a little wrong, as long as you're making a sound decision and you're willing to move quickly and you're willing to be correct and you're willing to be transparent about it. And I see this inside of Microsoft where we have our CEO, Satya Nadella, is very clear. Like we need to move fast. We need to move as fast as those early startups because those are our partners, but those are also our competitors. And if people are afraid to make decisions, then what do we have leaders for? If everyone is just going along with status quo, then we're going to get status quo results. And we're just not in the business of generating status quo results. So people have to get comfortable taking on a little bit of risk, right? And then celebrating it when we get it right. And acknowledge when we get it wrong and learn from it. But that has to come from the very top and permeate through the entire organization. And when it comes to the POCs, right, I used to work at McKinsey, and it was always fascinating to me as a consultant, the number of times when companies would bring us in just to ratify a decision that had already been made. Because nobody wanted to be the one who was on the hook for it. And that just meant it was great for us consultants. It was more money, but it's some time to get it done for the company. And at the pace of change, you just don't have that now. You have to be willing to be the person who put yourself on the line and have conviction. Right? Or else you're just because your competition is. Right? So you just gotta you can't be in this POC cycle over and over and over again where no one wants to make a decision because you're gonna fall behind the competition. And your competition may not, by the way, the competition may not be the incumbents in the space. The competition is the new disruptor who's coming in as well, who's figured out how to make those decisions faster and how to use AI better than you.
I love that. And as someone who has brought in McKinsey to a past life company, I was always disappointed when they disagreed with everything that I wanted to do. Okay, spicy question. Are we ready for a spicy question? Are the robots coming to take our jobs? And let me ask that in a realistic way. 14,000 employees were cut by Amazon. 4,000 employees recently cut by Salesforce, specifically called out by Mark Benioff, AI investments. We're talking about productivity gains. We all know what productivity gains means. So are the robots coming to take our jobs?
One way to think about this is if a company is trying to encourage people to use agents, and then it chooses to let some people go from the company, maybe because there's some challenges in the company. What's a really convenient narrative? A very convenient narrative is, oh, we're using AI so well.
AI whitewashing.
Yeah, we're using AI so well, we don't need these folks. Right? That's a much better story than Wall Street's putting pressure on our costs and we need to expand our margins. That doesn't play so well. Right? It plays a lot better to say, I've got so much productivity from using our product that I don't need all the people that I have. And that's one thing I think about, right? In terms of what's the orientation of a message on that front? But that's not your fundamental question. Your fundamental question is like, are robots coming to take our jobs? And the thing that I fervently believe is it's not like the robots that are coming to take everyone's job, right? It is the people who know how to lead the robots, who use AI, who are going to have the best jobs, have the most success versus those people who say, I don't know how to build my robot army or my robot team, right? If you have a set of teammates and you can get more done because you've harnessed your team in a really effective way, then people are always going to have great jobs. And those companies are always going to be successful. Like the history of capitalism is you don't penalize people who are highly efficient. Right? Like you throw more resources their way. You throw more resources into those companies that can figure out how to do more with the same amount. You don't give them less. Right? You say like the flight of capital is to the best return on that capital. And if you can get a better return on that capital by using robots, then capital is going to flow your way. Right? It's those people who are like, oh, I don't know how to use the robots. I don't know how to use AI, who really should be afraid.
I love that. Okay, we're almost out of time here, so we're going to do one last question. When everyone goes back to their desk tomorrow, what should they be thinking about when it comes to transforming their own career and how their teams work and what tech's role is in their business?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is we talked about the importance of being the leader who's comfortable making decisions, who is comfortable in having conviction. And that is not just about like organized wide decisions, but that's about changing all of your workflows day to day. It's about deciding how are you going to be that person who uses the AI teammates to be the most efficient person and set the example for the rest of the organization. Right? Like there's one person in the room who said they believe that their company and people throughout their organization are harnessing the power of AI to change all of their workflows. Right? The only way that happens is if people in this room set the example for the rest of the company and the rest of the organization starts following in line. Like people have to see it and see the success in order to believe it and to adopt it themselves. And so it's like for you to go out and to be that person, for you to go out and say, I understand the power of this. And yes, there's a momentary kind of delay in terms of like getting up the learning curve on it. And there's a moment where you have to spend time actually building up your own confidence with it. But once you do that, then it becomes like a superpower for you. And the other major piece is because we now have democratized intelligence. We have democratized analysis. And so expertise, in some ways, is less valuable than it's ever been before. Because expertise is just at the click of a few buttons away. What is now more important is being able to harness that expertise. Right? And so for all of you, figure out how to do that. Right? That's how you can be the organizations where capital flows in, opportunity flows in, because you have more productive and generate a better return from it.
I love it. Well, Andrew, this was so enlightening. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate what you do for Asana. And thank you, everybody. I hope you all had a great day.